were traveling with Jesus, and he turned and addressed them. If anyone comes to me without hating his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Which of you, wishing to construct a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if there is enough for its completion? Otherwise, after laying the foundation and finding himself unable to finish the work, the onlooker should laugh at him and say, "This one began to build but did not have the resources to finish." For what kind of king, marching into battle, would not first sit down and decide whether with 10,000 troops he can successfully oppose another king advancing upon him with 20,000 troops? But if not, while he is still far away, he will send a delegation to ask for peace terms. In the same way, any one of you who does not renounce all his possessions cannot be my disciple. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Today we're continuing following Jesus as he journeys from Galilee up to Jerusalem. And as we follow him throughout these weeks of ordinary time, one of the things that we recognize is as Christ is traveling from Galilee to Jerusalem, more and more people begin to follow him. They hear about him. They hear about his teachings. They especially hear about his miracles. And they want to see what is going on. Notice that St. Luke reports to us that great crowds were following Jesus. A lot of people were following Jesus. And they all were following Jesus for various reasons. Some were true disciples, though had given up everything to follow Jesus. They were allowing Christ's teachings to touch the depths of their soul. They were modifying their lives so that it would conform to the life and teachings of Christ. While others were just following him out of curiosity. He was a great preacher. To them, he was entertaining, or they were just following him out of curiosity. That's where we don't want to be. The central question of today's gospel, then, is why are you a follower of Jesus? Are you a true disciple in which you allow his teachings, his manner of life to color every part of you? Do you allow him to change your life? Or are you like these other guys who tag along? They're just there to watch. They're just there to be entertained. They're just there so that they can have something interesting to do. This is a challenge that Christ poses to us. And that's why he says to all of them, and he says to us today, if anyone comes to me without hating his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Now, those words should strike us as very harsh. But what does Christ really mean about that? Does he really want us to hate, to intensely dislike someone? No, that's not what he means. Remember that Christ did not speak English. And so we have to understand that in the translation, there was some meaning that was lost. This here that has been translated, hating father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, and even your own life, was a way of speaking in the Semitic world, in which they would use exaggeration to make a point. It was an idiom. It was a way of speech. Just like when we say that it's raining cats and dogs outside. We don't literally mean that dogs and cats are falling from the sky. Or it's as hot as hell. Hopefully no one has experienced hell to know how hot it really is. But we mean it is really hot, uncomfortably hot. So when Jesus says that if you do not hate your father and mother, brother or sister, spouse and children, he's not meaning that we should hate people, because that would counteract his great teaching of the two summaries of the law: to love God above all things and to love our neighbors as ourselves. And Christ does not contradict himself. So what does he mean by this? In this Jewish way of speaking, to say that you hate something in this context means that you immensely love something way greater. And that's what Jesus is saying. He says, if you come to me without loving me above all these other relationships, then don't even bother. That's what he's saying. If you want to follow Jesus, yet you haven't placed the relationship with our Lord as over and above all your other relationships, then don't waste your time, he says. Don't bother. Because why? He's speaking to these crowds that are following him. And he knows where he's taking them. They don't know where he's taking them. They know they're going to Jerusalem. But Jerusalem was just the capital city. But there's something about Jerusalem for Christ that these people don't know about yet. You see, for Christ, Jerusalem will be the culmination of his mission on earth. In Jerusalem, Christ will take up his cross, and he will be crucified unjustly, and he will die for our sins, and he will pay the price of our redemption through his suffering and death. That's what's going to happen in Jerusalem. And that's why he says, and whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. You see, Jesus understands, even though the people don't understand yet. Jesus understands that the cost of following him should cost them everything. Because why? The cost of him making himself worthy of us to follow him cost him his life. It cost Jesus his life so that he could become worthy of us following him. And so therefore, if it cost him his life so that we could follow him, then he's saying to us, what should it cost you? And the answer is, it should cost us our life. It should cost us all our relationships. It should cost us all our possessions. That's why at the end of the gospel, he gives two examples very briefly. He says, if you really want to know what it's going to take to be my disciple, you need to count the cost. You need to be like the man who's building the tower, and you need to count the cost and figure out, do I have enough materials and do I have enough money to finish this project? Otherwise, if you get started on this project, you can't finish it, you're going to be the laughingstock of your town. Or, if you're going to be like this king who is wondering if he should go to war with his neighbor, you need to count the cost to see if your troops are better trained than the other guy who has more troops than you. And if you figure out that you can't win, then you should do the smart thing and ask for peace. So Jesus is actually being very practical here. He says, you want to follow me? Great. But count the cost and see how much investment you're going to put in following me. And if you're not going to put me as number one, then don't even bother. You're going to be wasting your time. But instead, if you're willing to spend yourself for Christ, it's well worth it. It's worth your eternity. And so very practically, the church has always offered us, okay, I want to be a good disciple of Jesus. I don't want to be just a tag-along, a surface follower, a shallow follower. I want to be dedicated. So how do we evaluate ourselves? Well, count the cost. What do you spend your time on? You can see how much of value something is by evaluating how much time you spend with that thing. So is your relationship with the Lord most important to you? If it is, then it should be reflected by how much time you spend with the Lord in prayer, in reading the sacred scriptures, in studying about the faith. Or do you spend more time when you look at your 24-hour period? Do you spend more time exercising, chatting on the phone, surfing on the web, playing video games, reading fictional novels, whatever? Just insert that. What do you spend your time on? Can you really say, when you weigh it all out, that you spend your time most concerning the things of God and promoting your relationship with Him? Secondly, your resources. How you spend your money, how you spend and use the things you have. That shows a lot of what's important in your life. Do you spend your money by giving a portion to the church so the church can do what she needs to do? Do you spend your money by offering for those who are in need? Because Jesus reminds us, whenever we help the poor, we are storing treasures in heaven where moth and decay can't touch. Or how do you spend your money? On frivolous things? On yourself? What do you spend your money on? How do you use your resources? That says a lot about what priority God has in your life. And then lastly, evaluate your talents, those special blessings that God has given you. Can you sing? Do you have a great gift for hospitality? Can you teach? What can you do? And have you volunteered those talents, those services for the church? Have you volunteered and given those services for the general benefit of the community even? Do you do it for your own family members? Do you do it for friends who are in need? Do you do it for other people who are in need? How do you spend those talents? See, Jesus is very practical today for us. He says, good, I want you to follow me. But I don't want you to just be the shallow surface follower, these tag-alongs that he has a whole bunch of people who are tag-alongs. And we know at the end of the story that a bunch of them just left him. He doesn't want that. He wants serious, committed disciples, where his teachings truly touch the depths of our beings, so that we are transformed into him for the world. And he wants disciples in which we are dedicated and invested. We're invested in being Christian. We are invested practically in being a Catholic. Not just in name only. Not just because you have a baptismal certificate filed here at this parish or some other parish, but that you are invested practically in your time, your resources, and your talents, so that you can show God by the way you live your life. And you can show God by the attitudes that you harbor in your mind and your heart, that yes, you have placed him as number one. And you do, quote unquote, hate mother, father, brother, sister, spouse, and children. That you love God more than these. And that through that, then you've learned that you are willing to take up the cross, just like he did in Jerusalem. That you're not going to be a mere sightseer when you reach Jerusalem. But that when you follow Christ all the way to Jerusalem, you know what's going to happen. The cross. You know that he's going to ask for every single last bit of you. Your whole self. And that's when we experience the completion of true discipleship. It's a work in progress, but we have to be willing to persevere. That's why Jesus says all the time, he who perseveres to the end will find salvation. While we're on this side of eternity, we're still a work in progress, but we must persevere to want to and to do things that will make sure that God is number one in our life. So today the Lord leaves us with these very challenging words. Think about your life. Think about how you spend your time, spend your money, and spend your talents. And see if at each of those categories, Christ can truly be number one in your life, reflected by how you do those things. And if the answer is not quite no, then figure out how you can spend your time and your treasures and your talents in a way so that your life itself becomes a very testimony that Jesus is your all in all. He is your everything.